I would leave saying, that sucked. I don't want to go back to the gym. Everything hurts. My shoulder hurts. My knee hurts. It's not constructive. It's not productive for me to be there. It didn't relieve stress.
A lot of that actually is a trauma response that is masked in having a good time. When in reality, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they're just avoiding something or not dealing with something uncomfortable.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1415. Sleep is actually productive. I get a very productive night of sleep last night. Today, for episode number 1416, happy Wednesday. When life knocks you down, what do you do? I spent some time on Saturday, Alan, finishing up a song that I had written. And Taryn was getting ready to go somewhere. She's going out. She's going to see somebody. I don't remember where she was going. And she said this jokingly. She said, how come you never write love songs about me? And we laughed about it. And I said, I don't know. Usually when I write, it's usually because I've been beaten down. I'm usually overwhelmed, I'm sad, I'm heartbroken, I'm lonely. I said, babe, a lot of my inspiration comes from when I'm suffering. And when I'm deeply in love, there's not a lot of inspiration there anymore. A lot of it comes from me feeling rejected or neglected or sad or hurt or disappointed or whatever it may be. And we joked about it, but that was really a breakthrough for me, because then I connected the dots to when I was the loneliest, I wrote the most. When I was the brokest, I wrote the most, and that's probably a dangerous game. And then I connected it back another layer. So earlier in life, before I was doing as much writing, anytime I would get my heart broken or I would feel super lonely or something bad would happen to me, I would go to the gym. That's when I did. When life knocked me down, I usually went to the gym. And that became what we were calling a productive trauma response. Productive stress response, whatever you want to consider it. If I had negative things that I did, so when life knocks me down, say maybe I went out drinking, that wouldn't be as productive. That wouldn't have lended itself to me being as in good a shape as I was. And I still do that. When I'm overwhelmed, the gym is my therapy. It really grounds me. And I lost sight of that when I wasn't working out. Now connecting the dots, I was more anxious for sure. I wasn't sleeping as well. I probably was more irritable, but I've gone to the gym every single day. I don't know. It's been a minute, probably a month I've gone every day. I love it. It's the best. It's the best. And it's really, really good for me. So my question for you, I'll start with a question. What is your productive trauma response if you're out there? And then we could reverse that question and add another layer. What is your destructive trauma response if you have one?
First and foremost, the fact that you've been in the gym for a full month, it is noticeable.
I think I missed one day.
Your self-esteem, appreciate your honesty. Your self-esteem is higher.
Definitely.
You're more centered. It's definitely noticeable in your energy. It's good. Really good.
You don't know. Yeah. That's the hard thing, is you don't know when you're doing it, now I feel normal. Well, then when I stop doing it, this is what normal feels like. You don't know until you take a step back and look below the log for the salamander. You ever find salamanders?
Oh, yeah.
Of course you
definitely.
Yeah, that's why we get along. Real quick. Just real quick. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. My buddy and I think I told you this. We made a salamander hut in the woods. It had a river. We made them a hot tub and everything. And then they left. They moved out.
Yeah, they didn't want anything to do with it. Yeah. Not proud of this. No, that's how every good story starts.
Don't tell me.
No. My friend and I used to build these little mini sand pits, and we used to have the red ants versus the black ants.
Wow.
Yeah, and I, again, not proud of this. I wouldn't do this again, but as a kid, I was curious, and we would bring in other caterpillars.
This is getting dark.
Yeah, a little bit.
That was your trauma response back then, was to make animals suffer.
I thought we were supposed to do war. I thought the red ants were supposed to battle the black ants.
I think everybody has that, a little of that when they're young, trying to figure out.
And then, do you know what a lion ant is?
No.
Okay. This is irrelevant to this episode, but a lion ant is an ant that digs under the ground, and it has like a little burrow thing that ants fall in, and then they come out and they start spitting out. Look up lion ant. It's fascinating.
Okay.
I used to put those as mines in the minefield. We used to play bugs. We played bugs as a little kid. So it's a little bit about my childhood and Kevin's childhood. Back to this episode, trauma response. I think all of us have a constructive or destructive trauma response at all times. At all times. I would say there are some, it's a spectrum. On the far end, we'll go 0 to 10 like we do at NLU. At NLU. And 0 would be fully destructive. 10 would be fully constructive. I would say that you going to the gym is on the very high end of constructive. So not only are you getting centered, getting healthier, working through your stuff, processing things, but you're also building a better body, stronger body. I would say emotional eating as a trauma response can be productive if you're eating nutritious foods after a good workout, but most likely emotional eating is not constructive. But it is technically constructive if you eat, take a nap, and then you feel better after, and then you get back after it. These trauma responses have a lot of nuances, right? It's obviously if you're in a certain diet that you can't have your calories go above a certain amount, emotional eating is not good. But for you out there watching or listening, what is your trauma response? There's 4 main ones. I didn't know about the 4th, actually, for a very long time. It took me till my 30s to learn the 4th one. Emilia taught me this. So the ones that everyone know is fight or flight. Those are the common ones. Next is freeze, which is just do nothing. And then the 4th one that I didn't know about is fawn. And that actually was the one that was my biggest blind spot. So fight to get better, fight the other person or thing, whatever it is. Flight, run away, avoid, shell up. Those are very, very common. Freeze is disassociate, do nothing. I know a lot of females out there who have dealt with any sexual traumas or anything like that. A lot of times they'll just freeze. That's something common, unfortunately. And then fawn. Fawn is do whatever the other person, or a good example of fawning would be if you have an alcoholic parent growing up and they want you to do something, you just go do it even if you disagree with it because you don't want to be hurt. And so we develop these trauma responses. Some of us go into our room, watch our favorite show, and eat food as a trauma response. Some of us fawn, some of us, which would be flight. So in that case, go into your room. I have one client I'm thinking of right now who would spend her childhood in her room because whenever she got yelled at by her abusive father, she would always just go hide in her room. And that would be flight. Fawn would be do whatever he wants. Fight would be challenge him, which when she was small, she couldn't do. And so we're all still running these same trauma responses. I did a blog recently. If you've read blog number 7, I talked about my past and I talked about my trauma response. Fortunately, my trauma response growing up was aim higher, dream bigger, believe in myself more, work harder, work smarter. That was constructive. That was my constructive trauma response, fortunately. My destructive trauma response, which I talk about in the blog, was alcohol. It was fun, it was escape, and it was alcohol. And a lot of people that are having fun and escaping and drugs and alcohol and other things like that, a lot of that actually is a trauma response that is masked in having a good time. When in reality, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they're just avoiding something or not dealing with something uncomfortable.
Would you argue, this is what I was thinking, many of the things you're really, really good at, it might be because it was a trauma response?
Definitely. If you have experience in something, I'll give you a perfect example. So one of my trauma responses when I had a tough time growing up was movies. We actually talked recently about how I didn't have cable during one of the hardest times in my life when my stepdad left at 14. Movies were my escape. I have an ex-girlfriend, sweetest person. she read so many books because the Harry Potter books, all those books were an escape for her. And she had a challenging childhood. So she was amazing at reading, extremely good at reading and writing, and she did really well in school because she was always reading. She had a great vocabulary. She's way better at reading than I was. But I knew way more about movies. And so when I went to LA and wanted to work in show business, I knew about directors and I knew about casting. I knew how it all worked because I had studied movies for so long. And I didn't realize this until recently, Kev, but Emilia and I have been working on effective communication. You and I have as well. I had been studying storytelling for over a decade just through film. I'm fascinated by stories and characters and character development and story arcs and 3-act structure. And even if you didn't understand everything I just said, a lot of that was a trauma response because I studied film, because film for me has always been an escape. But with that escape comes something that you get really good at that other people don't. And there's a way to leverage that. I use storytelling all the time now. We're about to give a speech in Pittsburgh. I'm going to tell a story. And the way in which you tell that story can be super, super compelling. I've talked about the 3 movies. The first movie is it starts out at an award ceremony, ends on another bigger award ceremony. No struggle whatsoever. Second movie is rags, no riches, failure, 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 struggle, 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 even more rags at the end. Those first 2 movies aren't compelling. The third movie is rags to riches, struggles and triumph, failure and success. And the way in which you develop the character and the character transforms throughout the narrative, that all of that was at least born and bred through my own trauma response. And I know heroes growing up, superheroes and all that. For me, some of my biggest heroes growing up were superheroes like Captain America or Iron Man or whatever it is. And so I think there's always a benefit, a pro and a con to every trauma response. And then as you get older, hopefully you recognize what yours were. You recognize your own unique superpowers within that. And then hopefully you deploy that to be more successful and impact more people.
I think my negative one probably was smoking weed, probably. Maybe porn before that. I don't know if that was really a trauma response. I think that was more of an addiction than anything. I don't think weed was ever an addiction. It was more, I think it was more a trauma response, maybe a stress response, whatever you want to consider it. Might not have been.
Do you think you ever used it to escape?
Yeah.
This is the tool versus the crutch.
I think it was a flight. I was flighting from, because I've talked about this, I still partake occasionally in marijuana, whether it's an edible or whatever it may be, but it's not for that. I'm not looking for an escape.
What's the difference, if you wouldn't mind sharing? Because it feels different, right? It doesn't feel like a crutch anymore?
No.
Yeah.
I'm not really looking for... The only result I'm really looking for is just extra relaxation and or more creative thinking. Those are really the only 2 things If Tara and I are going to have a movie night or something, I might pop an edible and watch, and I always have I just have deeper thoughts about the movie. That's pretty much it. It's just not what it used to be. That's what I would say. And I would say the other thing too is, there's a lot more stress now, but there's a lot more constructive areas to put the stress. Right? There's just a lot of, we get to do this every day, and this is very fulfilling, so this helps. It's not direct. It's not, I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to go podcast. But this definitely, it purges the valve of pressure for sure.
Definitely.
Right? We're going to record 7 episodes today. I'm not really thinking about that much else. There's not that much going on in my mind. It's just like, let's do this episode. Oh, this is the next one. Awesome. What a story. So that's helpful too. So this could even be an episode of what are the things that help alleviate stress proactively and constructively.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I am a dental hygienist and a mom of 2 teenagers. I was first introduced to Kevin and Alan about 3 years ago So that led me to book a consultation with Alan, and I showed up to that call in the lowest spot that I have been at in my entire life. He is a good human that genuinely wants the best in your life, your future, your love, your relationships, your wealth, and if you have the chance to be in the same room or on the same call or have these two in your life in any way, then you are blessed.
Well, all of us have a list, hopefully, in our mind, whether we've written it down or not, of therapy. Like, what is your therapy? And again, I don't mean actual therapy. I do recommend that as well. But for me, playing basketball, watching films, food for sure.
Yes.
Delicious food. For a lot of people, it's walks in nature. For me, fitness, 100%. You can always tell when I'm having a hard day when I have to go to the gym, or at least that's what I tell myself. But I listen to specific things that are not positive. I don't want to say they're not positive. They're kind of like, I don't want to say sad. They're deeply contemplative. I have some go-to speeches and I have go-to songs that are
I was going to say, Are they in the melancholy playlist?
Yes, I have a specific playlist that I use to go and reflect on the journey and how hard it's been. And honestly, my trauma response is going to the future. It's reflecting on the past and building a bigger future. It is. We did a Relationship Talks event recently that went really well, but after it, I'm so spent. They end at like 7:30 at night. They used to end at 8:30 at night. And that stuff's hard for me. I don't know how to explain these things. I'm not necessarily super good at it. I think I'm a strong communicator, but it's way outside my comfort zone. And I always have really hard days, those days, promotion, blah, blah, blah. After those events, we do feedback, experience review, most important win, most important improvement. And there's so much feedback. We're usually focused, because it's Emilia and I, on what we did poorly, not what went well, just because we want to improve. And usually after that, I got to go to the gym and I just got to listen to, I have this one speech by Bob Proctor that I frequent, and it's got this great music in the background to it. And I just frequent this speech. I love it. I have the thing, maybe not memorized, but it's one of those things that you can listen without listening because you've seen it so many times. It's like a movie that you've seen so many times that you can just put it on and you don't have to pay attention really, but you're still in it. I don't know if that's unique to me or not, but anyways, in those moments, I always just dream bigger. I always reflect on the past, how far I've come, and then I dream bigger. So that's another trauma response that I've been doing since I was a little kid, and maybe anyone out there listening might be doing this too. Fortunately for me, my trauma response to pain and suffering and adversity was go recluse, find a way to dream bigger, believe in yourself more, and figure out how to climb out of whatever dark hole you're in. It's really that. It's figure out how to climb to the next level. That's kind of what it is, even if the next level is digging out of a terrible dark hole.
I don't really look into the future. I usually just look into the past. Makes sense. You and I are very much on brand. But I always reflect. That's why I say I'll go back, and when I go back to my hometown, when I go visit Alan, it's weird. That's a weird experience for me. Cathartic. I don't even know what that word means, but I hear a lot of people use it when they're saying stuff like this. So maybe it's cathartic. I don't know. I don't know what it means. It's almost like therapy. It brings me back to who I used to be. And it's always a very, not emotional, it's emotional, not emotional in a negative way. It's a very emotional experience for me to drive down the street I used to live on. I remember the way I thought and what I expected from my future and what I thought of my past then. I remember that. I remember all that stuff. So it's always strange for me to do that. My question, my next level nugget for the listeners would be, what is something you've been doing for a long, long, long period of time, and have you connected when you do it the most, or when you get the most fulfillment, or when it seems the most necessary? One of the reasons, Alan, why I wasn't going to the gym before I really got into this groove is because my body was hurt. And every time I would go to the gym, it would be more stressful because I couldn't get a good workout. And it's like, and I understand, again, that's a first world problem for sure. But I would leave saying, that sucked. I don't want to go back to the gym. Everything hurts. My shoulder hurts. My knee hurts. It's not constructive. It's not productive for me to be there. It didn't relieve
if your
stress.
trauma response is go to the gym.
And you can't do that.
You can't do that because then it's going to create more pain. And the last thing you want is more pain when you're already in pain. There's something to be said for, we always say get outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And it's important. If you live for comfort, you're in so much trouble. I'll never sugarcoat that. Because life is inherently uncomfortable, especially if you want to do something magnificent. But if you're way outside your comfort zone, the last thing that is constructive is to go way outside your comfort zone again. It's like if you sprain your ankle and then play football the next day. It's not useful. It's not constructive. Yeah. But if you go to physical therapy and work it a little bit, it is constructive, you know? So some people say, okay, I'm not going to use my ankle for 3 months. I made that mistake. And it didn't heal as quickly as it would have if I actually was proactive with my physical therapy. And I've also been on the other end of that of, screw it, I'm going to play basketball the next day. And it just kept re-injuring. So we all have to find that sort of sweet spot. So whatever your trauma response is, figure out what it is. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. What's your go-to? We did this recently. Was it on book club? It was book club. I think we did a poll. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Group coaching.
Was it group coaching? Okay.
We did it in group coaching. Might have done it in book club as well.
Probably both. Which one is your go-to? And then just start recognizing when that's happening. And then what flavor of fawning? What, if it is flight, for me, flight, food, and movie. Okay, can I eat food that's nutritious towards my fitness goals and watch a movie that's inspiring me? Instead of just any movie. There's a way to make it constructive, you know? Mm. If you're going to go off the rails, do it as constructively as possible, for lack of better phrasing. Would it be better for me to pick up a personal development book? Of course, it would, and denying that is just wrong. But if I'm going to watch a movie, I might as well watch one that might have a good analogy that I could use on the podcast or will inspire me in some unique way, or one that I can connect with Emilia on. Like the Black Panther films. Unbelievable. They're so good. I can use analogies in those. Emilia's already said some things that were in the film, and also other people have seen them, so it's tough with Kev because he doesn't watch a lot of films, so sometimes I can't. It's like I got to explain the film, then explain the concept of why I was using the film. It's a whole thing. Unless it's a comedy, in which case he's definitely seen it.
Most likely.
But that's all, is what's your trauma response? And then how can you make that trauma response somehow more constructive towards what you value?
And that's an important piece of self-awareness to have too, where you said, could I do something more constructive? Could I find a way to make this even more constructive? I had a conversation with somebody recently. I'm talking about weed a lot on this episode. I don't know why. But this person said, I got to be very careful when I've been taking edibles and it's screwing up my diet. Oh, okay. The thing that maybe you're using for one thing is completely creating another potential problem. Mm-hmm. It's just self-awareness. Isn't it? It's very powerful how simple we are as humans. When you think about it. Like, okay, when something happens, I go do this. Okay, well, something happens is always going to happen. Different flavors, of course. What can I do to improve the flavor of my trauma response, stress response?
Definitely.
And everyone's so simple.
Yeah, well, there's 1,000 intricacies, you know,
of course,
to being a human. But I do think that's a big one.
I think so too.
A lot of your results, good and bad, you know, are predicated on whatever your trauma responses were. I know some people, their trauma response was to puff up and, you know, go think they're better and go, you know, but their relationships suffer. Yeah, you're more successful, but your relationship suffers. I know some people whose trauma response was to be vulnerable and to go snuggle with their partner. Their relationship's great, but they aren't necessarily as successful in their careers. And that's why it's so hard to be holistic. Yep. This is it right here. It's so hard to be holistic because we're all successful in the trauma response to whatever our trauma response was, created a lot of our success. That's why you're funny. 100%. That is 100% why you're funny. Kevin gets funnier and funnier the harder and harder things get.
It's fair.
Which is awesome because I get more and more intense.
It got me through some stuff. I watched a video. Again, I was reflecting. Oh, Hadouken. He Hadoukened his microphone. I was reflecting recently, and I was going through my old Snapchat videos, and that's what would happen. It would be Friday. I'd be tired. I stayed up for days on end. I'm 6 hours away from home, and I would have a video of Ray and I, a guy I used to work with, funny guy, and we were just laughing and making jokes, and that's how we got through it. We just laughed our way through all that pain, and we still do it today.
We do. Definitely. That has been one of my favorite parts.
Well, you and I are driving 10 hours in a couple of days, so I'm sure you and I will have some laughs along the way.
We will definitely have some laughs.
I'm sure we will. Next Level Nation, if you are looking for a group of like-minded individuals who are into growth, self-improvement, self-awareness, vulnerability, having the tough conversations, please join our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. The link is in the show notes.
If you're on YouTube, you can see that I'm holding up a book by the one and only Jim Quick. The symbol, I just realized recently, is actually kind of the symbol of a brain. Very cool. The book is called Limitless. It's meta-learning, and what that means is learning how to learn. He talks about a lot of really valuable things. Mindset, method. This is one of the most practical books that I've ever read about how to improve your life. So I'm super, super excited. It's the next book in book club. We are going to do one chapter per week, every Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This Saturday will be moved. Kevin and I will be traveling. I'm going to be moving it to 3 p.m., maybe 4 p.m. I will confirm that. It's going to be moved to Sunday. There's been 2 book clubs in the last 150 something weeks in a row. I think it's that many. There's only been 2 book clubs where we had to move it to Sunday, but we will never miss a week. We're always there. Please register. The link will be in the show notes. We will inform you if anything changes because I have Brandon emailing the people that have registered before the book club. And Limitless by Jim Quick. We're doing one chapter at a time. Chapter 1 is excellent, powerful story. We hope to see you there.
Tomorrow for episode number 1417, one feeling we all need. Again, it's weird where these episodes come from. Sometimes these episodes, something happens in my life, and I think to myself, ooh, that would be a really, really good episode. Hopefully this one will be. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Dial in those trauma responses. Next Level Nation.